Hello and welcome to BT Media's In Conversation With series. This afternoon, I'm delighted to welcome Mark Shashoua, CEO of Hyve Group. Good afternoon, Mark. How are you today?
I'm very well. Nice to see you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
No, great. And you said you're in the office with a few of your staff, and it's a couple of days before Christmas. It's still going.
Exactly. We're still going strong. That's right.
Mark, you have been in the exhibitions industry for a number of years, say 20 plus years, 25, 30.
We don't say anymore, but yes, for a while.
What drives your passion for events and exhibitions specifically?
What drives my passion? Well, look, I maybe a little bit of history. I mean, I'm second generation, so I learned this trade from my father. My father is he was a true pioneer of the industry. He was a true showman.
Yeah.
He loved the thrill, the entertainment of it, the experience of it. He loved bringing people together.
Sure.
And that I was brought up from a very, very young age, sort of trailing him in different geographies. His pioneering was into various new emerging markets at the time. So he was one of the first in the Middle East in the 70s, the first in China in the 80s. Eastern Europe in the 90s. So I was very lucky. I was able to travel with him at a ridiculously young age, see the what it meant to bring people together.
Sure.
And it gets in your blood. I'm sure you've interviewed a number of people. I mean, it gets into your blood. I think my father said to me once, he said, if we were better looking, we would be actors. He said, but the reality is, he told me that when I was about 11. I was like, great. So I've had a complex ever since.
Yeah.
But it's true. I love the show element, and I love bringing people together.
Yeah.
And obviously that's become more sophisticated.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And you're right. A lot of people said similar that have been in the industry for a while. And I guess if you're going to do something for so long, even though you've done it in different iterations and things have changed, you essentially will have to enjoy what you do. Right? You've got to get up and enjoy the stuff like that.
Of course.
Can you, for those that aren't aware, can you sort of bring Hyve to life and just explain a bit about what it does?
Sure. Well, look, it's the legacy of this business was actually the company that my family and I started in the early 90s. It was very much an emerging market business. Though in those days, we were the first. This is really early 90s when Eastern Europe was opening up, and we were very lucky. We were in the right place at the right time, and we were helping basically bring international companies into markets that were closed for decades beforehand. So it was a really exciting time. We centered around Eastern Europe, we centered around Russia, Central Asia, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, that was the genesis, the legacy of this business was emerging markets. We built up the business, we sold it, we took it public in '98. We exited as a family. I exited, then went on to other things. And ITE, then the legacy business was called ITE. That continued in emerging markets and expanded largely through acquisition into multiple other geographies, so into China, into India, Turkey, and so on. So what Hyve is effectively the next generation of that legacy business, right? It is, I've been involved in the industry in between those times. I think the industry is going through, and I think our customers are changing, and what they want is becoming much more sophisticated. I think the industry is, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I think the industry is quite old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Most of the industry is very decentralized, very terrific organizers. And don't get me wrong, there's some amazing products out there and shows and people that work within them.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's quite old-fashioned. I think the industry is largely decentralized. I think it's so what we went on when I arrived here and took over in the end of 2016 was effectively a complete transformation of an industry of a company, moving it from a decentralized emerging markets only business that ran lots of different shows. I mean, it was running 269 shows, some very large, some absolutely tiny. It was much more of a geographic play, market share led play, than opposed to one which I believe in, which is all about the market leading events. So we have transformed this business. We've gone from 269 shows to just over 100. but the shows are significantly larger. So we're focusing on a global portfolio of market-leading events across a number of different industry sectors through what we call a centralized operating model, where we get best practice that is created centrally and then rolled out across the world, so that every single show has the same level of best practice instilled across the business. Yeah. That's a quick nutshell.
So I'm always fascinated because, oh, sorry, excuse me 1 minute. I'm always fascinated to understand in terms of, people, you start in the business doing one thing, and obviously then it's grown and developed over a number of years. And I guess you can only do that with good people around you, right? It's not something that, you woke up with those skills. How does, I mean, we're sort of going off topic, but it's interesting for viewers to sort of understand how an individual and a group of people manage to sort of grow a business and scale a business. What do you think the secret to doing that is?
Everybody's got their own way,
Yeah.
So the way that we look at it and the way I look at it is that you have to constantly disrupt your own business, right? So you're constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly trying to be one step ahead. To do the same thing over and over again is actually ultimately will lead to decline, right? So that's how we do it. I'm sure I can't speak for others, but I mean, so we are constantly looking to disrupt. We're constantly look to evolve. It's ingrained in everybody in the company is that change is a constant. Yeah. And so and you have to surround yourself with like-minded people. Yep. Doesn't mean everybody is a carbon copy of each other, not quite the opposite. So you need people from different skill sets, different diversity, but it has to have a like-minded, people have to be like-minded and want to adapt and want to have change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we're looking for, and therefore a unified culture across the group.
And you moved to the new brand of Hyve that you just spoke about 18 months ago, a bit less.
Yep, September last year. So just about 14 months ago. Yes. I mean, and we did that because we were ultimately it was the end of our transformation. Yeah. We had done a 3-year transformation, and we're very much a very different business than we were when we started. And the culmination of a transformation was Hyve. Hyve is what we aspire to be, and it's a very different business than we were when we took over in 2016.
So you launched the new brand, and obviously with it, I've read and I've watched obviously films. You were talking about the future and what you were going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And
then within 2 or 3 months, especially in China, because it was the back end of last year, COVID strikes.
Yeah.
The disruptors became disrupted by COVID. What are someone in your position and as a group of people that have just announced, a new brand, somewhat a new strategy going forward or continuation? How do you react to that? How's it been? I know it's a big question.
How's it been?
But when it first struck, like, what were your, what were the thoughts?
Well, look, let's be clear. So I suppose what I can go to the future to get to the past is what will happen with COVID is ultimately it will accelerate trends that were already happening anyway. Right. Yeah. So that's what's going to happen. So it's not like we're disrupting because of COVID. It's quite the opposite. It's just going to bring forward trends that were already in place. Yeah. It may have taken 10 years for those trends to turn into reality, and COVID's brought it forward, but this would have happened anyway. Yeah. So that's always been the mindset here. The first initial reaction was, thank God we did what we call the TAG program, which was the transformation. Thank God we shifted to market leading shows, because it is the market leading shows that are the ones that will recover the fastest. Marketing spend in any economic crisis tends to reduce, but then it does tend to gravitate towards the main event. So thank God we did all the work we did for 3 years. So actually we were feeling quite blessed that if this was going to happen, that happened that, at the time after we had done the transformation. But then the reality is, I'm sure many people have, but I've been through quite a few different types of crises. Yes, it's the first pandemic, but the type of crisis tends to be quite similar, right? Yeah. One is it always gets worse before it gets better. Always does. You cannot be optimistic in terms of your planning. Yeah. You have to be realistic. You have to be, and again, we're very lucky we transformed ourselves into effectively a centralized way of thinking. So we were able to adapt very quickly to bring people together to have a centralized way of operating. How are we going to manage this crisis from every which way possible, from cash management to people to how we're going to deal with our customers, what's our refund policy, what's our rollover policy. I mean, you name it, health and safety. So we acted, I think, very, very quickly, very decisively. And touch wood, a lot of the things that we did early on have put us in a very strong position coming, to weather it and then coming out strongly. Plus, we've been blessed. We have insurance. I have to say we're very lucky. We reviewed our insurance policies when we started in 2016, but it is, we're very blessed that we have that. So I have to, we can't take all the credit. I mean, a big part of it is we're very blessed with that.
Sure. Yeah. And you've got, the Hyves has what, 1,000+ staff at the moment?
Yeah, just shy. Yeah.
And in what, 13 territories, 13 countries?
Yeah, we operate all across the world. Yeah.
So, and again, I've spoken to the likes of Doug Emsey and others who obviously run businesses across the world. You talk about instilling a culture and at this time, getting everyone to sort of pull in the right direction. How do you do that with so many sort of disparate parts, if you like, and moving parts?
Well, to be fair, that was all the transformation of the 3 years before. That's why when I say in terms of timing, if it was going to happen, this pandemic, thank God it happened now. If this had happened 2 years ago, you're absolutely right. That is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
But we have already done that. We have already instilled a uniform culture across all of our operations around the world. So actually, we were in quite a strong position to be able to react quickly to this pandemic.
Okay. And in terms of the response of, and I've interviewed the likes of Chris Skeeth and also Kai Hattendorf from Ufi, and also David Adrain from SISO. How have you worked and how have you found the industry bodies in terms of helping the industry around the world to sort of move forward?
Look, I think they're doing as great a job as they possibly can do. Yeah, I think it's limited in what they can do. I think that's realistic, but everything they can physically possibly do, I have to tip my hat off. They are working tirelessly to try and support everybody and help bring people together. But I do think we have to be realistic. It's very different, the approach and every geography is very different, how they view events and trade fairs. Yeah. And by the government. So in Germany, because largely it is state owned, most of the events industry, they understand the economic importance of these trade fairs. There is quite a very strong response and support. But then you come to England where it's the exact opposite, right? So Chris has got an incredibly difficult job to try to convince government that constantly changes that we're not nightclub owners. It's I'll be honest with you, I think it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Not the trade, not the association. Government's lack of understanding.
Yeah.
I think that's actually quite sad. And then you look at an American SISO and Doug as the chairman there. Yeah. They've done a great job trying to, and that's a completely decentralized country trying to get government to focus on it. So I think it really depends on country by country, I'd say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of your clients, and again, I guess it depends by country and obviously sector, but how have you tried to liaise with them at this time and obviously talk about your plans going forward? How have you tried to take them on the journey?
With customers?
Yeah.
Just enormous amounts of communication. Yeah. Enormous amounts. I think we're trying to work. We're talking to our customers about easily 10 to 20 times more than we normally would.
Right. Which is a good thing.
So, which is a terrific thing. Yeah. So it's enormous amounts of communication. Yeah. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Because I'm aware that you have, if I'm not wrong, that you've got a customer service, I think, division that is dedicated, obviously before this time anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to what you said, you've obviously put a lot of these pillars in place, which are now serving you in good stead, I guess.
Yes. That has helped. And again, it's that centralized operating model. It's that ability that if we see one form of best practice somewhere, we roll it out quickly across the group. So if one thing works well with someone or in one area, we quickly roll it out across the company. But look, the reality is you've got to be in communication. That everybody's going through this pandemic together. It's not just one person that's doing it or one country. It's a worldwide issue across every single industry sector you can think of. So the only way through it is constant communication.
And obviously there's research put out by the likes of story with Ufi and positive statistics that came out of that. Do the conversations you have with your customers around the world back that up? Have they missed events like face to face? Are they willing to come back when ready?
Yes. There's no question that there is an enormous pent up demand. There is a need for trade fairs in order to generate business for people. I mean, and there has not been an alternative that works for people. So yes, there is a massive pent up demand. I will say that it is evolving. And I'm sure you'll ask me lots of questions about what we've recently done and what we call our omnichannel strategy. But that's evolving. But there's absolutely no question that there is an enormous pent-up demand, and I think that will continue for decades to come. So I think there is an incredibly important place for events in every sector, in every industry, in every geography.
Sure. Talking about the omni-channel strategy, which is obviously timely given the announcement of the acquisition you made yesterday. We've all sat on lots of webinars, virtual events over the last 6 months. Lots of organisers were rushing to do webinars and events. Very good for information, not so good for generating revenue, which, let's face it, especially if we've got shareholders, whether they're private or institutional, whatever, we need to make money off these things. Can you describe what omnichannel means to you? And then let's talk about the reasons for the acquisition yesterday and of Retail Meetup.
Yeah, sure. So I think that the way that we describe it is very simple. So we service 3 fundamental customer needs. Okay, we bring people together to trade, we bring people together to network, we bring people together to learn. Okay, I understand that that's quite a simplistic way of looking at it, but that's ultimately what we do. We bring people together to do those 3 things. Of course, there's other things, but predominantly those 3. And that is a need that that there's a clear need for that. Omnichannel means is that there is also quite clear from customers that there are 2 channels in which they want to have that customer need fulfilled. One is in person, and that is through in-person events, trade fairs, congresses, and the like. In-person events that clearly do the trade, network, and learn. We are underpinning, so our omnichannel strategy is to only focus on market-leading shows, and underpinned through facilitated hosted meetings that are held on site. Yeah, we bought that capability with the original Shop Talk, where they do nearly 8,000 facilitated meetings during an in-person event, each one being generated $650 per meeting. The NPS scores are above 65, which is staggering in terms of return on investment and quality. So underpinned, so that in-person market leading shows, that's underpinned through hosted facilitated meetings, and also obviously in-person content. We do content at all of our shows and so on. The other channel though, and that's clear, and that's what COVID will do, is accelerate behaviors that would have happened anyway, which is people want to do more and more virtually, more and more online. So we believe that the vast majority of the industry, including ourselves, have focused on what you said just now, the learn side of things, which is webinars, it's content, it's basically content driven events online that we have found, we've done nearly 100 of them here, and we've tried lots of different things, that they are wonderful for engagement. I mean, genuinely wonderful for engagement, but you're absolutely right, very difficult to monetize, right? Content has become basically a commodity, a free commodity.
Which, sorry,
unless
it's similar to what's happened to the publishing industry.
Yes,
20 years.
yes, you're absolutely right.
Similar, sorry,
absolutely right. So unless that content is specific for qualifications or CPD led or medical, that's different. Okay, where people need to pay to get that information, but otherwise it's a terrific engagement tool, right? And we would actually continue that going forward. Where we do believe that customers will want more and more and more is the ability to network and trade online. Yeah. And that is effectively what Retail Meetup is. And that's the ability to, that brings an entire ecosystem of an industry sector, every element of that industry sector. So for this example, it's retail. So it's every e-commerce vendor, solution provider, retailer, the supply chain company, delivery company, analyst, investor, and so on and so on. How do you get that entire ecosystem to be able to engage, to network and trade online at a specific point in time over 3 half days is what we've chosen. And how do you do that? Through facilitated meetings that were planned way in advance, so that those people have mutually matched meetings and then can have time to prepare for those meetings and have a very high level of engagement. And that's also, and that's quite, I mean, I've said it quite quickly, but that's broadly what this is. And that is exceptionally difficult. I have not seen anything like this yet. It is incredibly difficult to do because it isn't an online event that is trying to replicate a trade fair, which I think is impossible.
Yeah.
This is a completely independent, built from scratch commercial proposition that was created, and it's been enabled through a creation of the software behind it, the technology, if that makes sense. So it's been an incredible success. The October event, it was a proof of concept for us. I mean, truly incredible. I mean, 18,000 meetups were held over 3 half days, 2,100 participants, 94% show up, so only 4% no shows. I mean, that is a staggering statistic. It's incredible what was built. And that's what we bought. And we bought that with the ability to scale it and to roll out multiple meetups throughout the year. So that's what we've done.
So, and just to understand, you can also plug it into the physical variant of your event as well?
You can do, absolutely. So how that works is at the in-person shop talk event, we already have a hosted meeting capability and a program. But to be clear, that's quite linear, right? It's the ability for an e-commerce vendor to meet with the head of e-commerce of a retail company. Still amazing, don't get me wrong, right? But it's quite linear, and so that represents roughly just over 1,000 people at the event participate in those meetings. But there's more than 10,000 people that come to that event. What Meetup does is that you can plug it into the physical one that captures the whole event, every element of the ecosystem, and that's very exciting.
Yeah,
this is I believe it's the holy grail of organizers. I mean, think about what we do, right? This is what I mean, we're quite an old-fashioned industry. Everybody talks about matchmaking and this and that, but it's fledgling, right? Just think, we spend all year bringing all the right people in a format, whether it's a hall or a room or whatever, and effectively we wish them luck, right? I mean, that is quite
a chance. I mean, which some of
it's, and the whole serendipity of things, but it's you can't have a business. The world's moved on. Serendipity is wonderful as an additional add-on, not the main purpose. That's what we believe.
I think you're right. And, you know, we've all been at events and I've organized events, and I always thought there's so much, you've got an exhibitor there, depending on who they are and the size of stand and stuff, but, they're just hoping that someone walks past that's the right person.
I agree.
Thinking, that's the needle in the haystack. Now, I guess the reason why people maybe haven't, change as quickly as they not even needed to, because they didn't need to, right? So
I agree. That's
trade
exactly right.
Organizers, and I could take Closer Still as a model, right? Put on some fantastic, massive shows, and they sold 3 times for significant multiples. I think the last one was 15 times. So why would they have done anything different? Because they've had it good for so long, and I guess that's been replicated in other companies as well. But I think, as you said, one positive to come out of this is that people now have been forced to have a look at their business models, which can only be a good thing. In terms of confidence in this sector, I mean, obviously you're FTSE All-Share Hyve, right? Index. And if I talk about private private investment in like Charterhouse bought, obviously Doug M's at Tarsus. And obviously there's been investment in Closer Still. How do you think the sector's now viewed? Because there wasn't so much investment specifically from private equity in the last 10 years, and they all then piled in. And I had this conversation with Phil Saw, and then obviously this has happened. Do you think they just see this as a blip, and it's still a good sector? What's your view? What's your investors and shareholders saying to you?
I think that the reality is that that in-person events are still a very, very, very good business model. There's no question, but there is now an additional element to it, which is this is a sector that is that now has an impact from outside forces that people hadn't factored in their investment thesis, if that makes sense, right? So people now will say, I used to invest in this sector because the returns are incredible.
Sure.
The cash flow side of the business is incredible. The retention rates are incredible. Of course, that depends on the type of business, but broadly, now they have to factor into their investment thesis, but in-person events can be affected by outside forces.
Sure.
So what do I think will happen is, yeah, it will impact valuations to a degree. But it depends on how that business evolves. Yeah, that's what I think. I think, we service those three fundamental needs, and that will continue for decades to come.
Sure.
Yeah.
In terms of the shape of the recovery, Mark, and I guess I'm talking about the UK maybe specifically for the moment, what's your view in terms of in-person events? Can you put a timescale on it? Coming back to physical?
Completely. But I mean, we've got markets that are, I'm sure Doug talked about it. China's is rebounded very, very strongly. We've seen the same thing with our shows there. We have shows going on that have happened over the past 3 months in Russia, in Ukraine, and Turkey. I think the reality is vaccinations and vaccines have been found. They are going to roll out, and therefore it's a question of when. Yeah. But I do think that's a short window. It's a moment in time. It's not, 6 months. It feels like a long time, but it's not. It'll be over like that.
Yeah.
Right. So how quick it will come back, it depends on how quick the vaccinations will be rolled out.
Sure.
But that will be relatively, is it 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months? I mean, it's going to happen. But what will happen is, and this is why we go on and on about it, is in terms of our view going forward, it's that customers will become much more discerning about what they're spending their money on coming out of this. That there's no question. It's the first time in my entire career that the entire marketing line of travel and events has been taken out. So those customers are now going to have to go back to their finance director and say, remember that money that you saved last year? I now want to spend it. Quite correctly, the finance person or the head of the company or whoever will say, but what am I going to get for that money? You lived without it last year. So that's what's going to come out of that. So again, that's just COVID bringing forward what would have happened anyway.
Sure.
That's what
just finishing up, can you give us maybe 2 or 3 sort of predictions or trends for next year?
I'll go be perfectly honest. I think what we know what we're doing, and we're going to focus on our omnichannel strategy. Yeah. I think everybody is going to try and come up with this virtual, that, and this, and that, and this, and you're going to hear lots of different buzzwords. But the reality is that unless they have a dedicated strategy on how they're going to evolve their business, then it's just going to be waiting until in-person events come back. I'm sure that's what a lot of people will do, and good luck to that. And I'm sure that's great. We're very clear about our omnichannel strategy and how we are evolving our offering to our customers.
Sure. And potentially more acquisitions in the pipeline?
Could be. I mean, honestly, I think this for us was really important to do meetup. It was effectively the missing piece of the omnichannel strategy. This will become the cornerstone. So we're busy rolling out the hosted meetings for our in-person events to be held in 2022, because it does take 12 months to roll it out. We've now got retail meetup. We'll be busy rolling those out. So if the right thing comes along, we'll look at it. Otherwise, we've got a lot of organic growth to do.
Sure.
Or recovery and growth, put it that way.
And what event, Mark, are you most looking forward to attending? Doesn't have to be.
Oh, I can't say that. That's like which one's my favorite child?
No, not even necessarily within Hyve, but people have said to me, because they've got one chap had a passion for a particular rock concert. I don't know. Is it like going back to the O2? Is it going into football stadium? No.
I if it's not an actual trade fair, because generally I just can't wait to go into a trade fair, and it could be anything, right? I just love to see the human interaction of people. But and I won't say which show is my favorite anyway. So, but in terms of other things, no, I just can't wait to go see a movie. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a big movie buff.
Fair enough. Something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Mark Shashoua from CEO of Hyve, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Like you're doing some fantastic, innovative things, which I'm sure we'd like to keep an eye on. So thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, and congratulations with your new business, and I wish you the very best with that as well.
Thank you.